Welcome back. Taking the discussion on risk and regulatory complexity further, I have with me Manish B Agarwal, Leader Infrastructure at PwC, and Guy Perry, President Smart Cities with SL Infrastructure. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining in here on this edition. Guy, let me start with you to begin with. What are the top risks and regulatory issues that you find you have to deal with here in India?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is that we still have a government system that's operating in silos. So trying to actually coordinate them to make better urban environments, because ultimately that's what we're looking for, is not just how do we implement a piece of infrastructure, but how do we implement a better way of life. And one of the things that we are finding is that getting them on the same page is quite a challenge. So some of the SPVs that are being formed as part of the smart cities, I think, are absolutely going in the right direction on that. But we are finding that even on a project as simple as a street, there are many, many hurdles. We're already facing a number of delays. But we don't mind going through that process because we know the next one will be much more efficient. But you just have to do it.
Manish, what are developers doing to kind of overcome these issues?
Yeah, so I think like Guy mentioned, delays has been a major concern for developers. While part of it was actions that the government needed to take, developers are realizing that they need improved project management capabilities in-house. Capacity building within the teams for bringing more predictability to project progress. So I see attempts like that to really strengthen project management and project delivery capability. The second thing, again, as Guy mentioned, that when they're looking at new projects, the experience from the past, which led to challenges, financial challenges and so on, that has gone into the learning process. So people are incorporating a healthy sense of skepticism when they're approaching new opportunities. So both for new projects and in case of existing projects, we clearly see developers becoming more mature in their approach to winning projects and in delivering them.
But in a way, what the government is also putting up as projects for bidding are more complete, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think, it's both the demand side and the supply side, in the sense that if developers and lenders will not look at projects that are not fully ready, it is incumbent on the government to then put in that much more effort in preparation of a project before they are put out. And we see that happening both ways.
Gisa, you said that you're running pilots. There's no other way to do it but to get your hands dirty, be on the ground, etc.
We do quite a bit of analysis prior to diving into something. But ultimately, you have to pick the ones that you think are most promising and the ones that you'll be able to execute on. And then run through the process. We also work with cities and regions to help them actually have a better strategy for their development. So by looking at a project and saying, okay, let's help the government with what we know, they may end up going to someone else and working with them. But at least we will have advanced the process so that the next bid is more sophisticated. Quickly.
In your area, smart cities, yes, are things moving at a pretty fast pace, or how would you rate it?
It depends. I think the aspirations are moving at a fast pace. But I have an issue about how we define smart cities, what the priorities are. I think that we need to focus more on a human metric. In other words, are people coming to cities and are they having really a better life? Are they having a healthier life? Are they having a longer life? Are they actually more satisfied with their lives? And that becomes a basis upon which we make certain infrastructure
decisions. But in terms of your interactions with the government, private-public partnerships, etc., is that smooth? There is understanding?
I think that there is an understanding. Right. I think it varies considerably from city to city. But we look at building long-term relationships because this is not a short-term game. We have to build trust with the governments, and that's why we're so transparent in our process.
What can governments and banks, for example, who are important entities in this structure, do to advance these PPPs back into focus?
So I think the first thing that the government needs to do, and is doing to some extent, is de-risking the PPP model. I think over time the PPP model became necessarily a user charge and a demand risk-based model. That is not necessary. I think the second is, and again the banks are recognizing the criticality of due diligence at the lenders level. Because only that will bring in genuine project finance into the infrastructure market in India. The lender's diligence in a PPP context is the kind of litmus test of feasibility of a project. I think again in a smart city context, several cities want to raise bonds or go for long-term financing. I think that in some sense will become a test of the feasibility of the underlying project, the SPV and the underlying cash flows. and the role of private sector in that.
So do comment on that. I mean, especially on the point about aligning with sources of funding like the bond markets, etc. Your sector specifically.
Well, one of the things that we, of course, worry about is the political vicissitudes that can occur over time, because these are long-term projects. And that's why it's so important that we get the PPP structure right, and we have common objectives over time that are beyond the reach of political change.
In terms of funding, etc., you think it's all it's sorted, or?
Well, I wouldn't say it's sorted yet. I'm not sure that there's been that much private investment yet in the smart city arena. But I think that as we tee up these projects more and more rigorously, and we achieve these common goals, or at least we set these common goals, I think that we'll see that the financing is much more forthcoming. There's a lot of international financing that wants to come to India. They want the right vehicles.
Where are we at in that process in terms of tying up funding structures? You know, we got infrastructure trusts, I mean, real estate trusts, rule changes which kind of plugged the loopholes earlier, and we got encouraging feedback on that. But I come in where Guy left off on that.
I think clearly risk management is at the heart of private capital in infrastructure. From the government's point of view, it is about de-risking investment in infrastructure, limiting risks to performance and not to political changes and politically sensitive issues like water tariffs, for example, that will not attract capital. From a developer's perspective, it is about de-risking delivery of projects, and if once those two come together, then it's really for the investor community, partly domestic but in huge terms overseas, to then look at these two sets of risks being investable. India's credit rating in any case is an area of concern. I mean, it is investment grade, and therefore that has an implication in terms of the kind of returns that one can make. But having said that, the returns are attractive at the risk level.
I'd just like to add to that, if cities are able to create safe havens for investment, they will find the investment flooding in. And this is, again, in Poland, 1999, 2000, 2001, it was a very risky market, perceived in many ways the way India is perceived today. But we created a safe haven within a district of a city, and the investors just flooded into that. We need to create those kinds of environments. I think it's probably going to be a city.
Have that kind of environment?
I think certain cities have a very good reputation now, and the question is whether they will build upon it. And of course, it means that different arms of government have to be working in coordinated ways. But if you can hit on all cylinders, in those contexts, I can guarantee you everyone is looking at India as a prime place for investment today.
Guy, Manish, thank you very much, both of you, for joining me on this discussion. Join me same time next week as we bring you another interesting discussion. Till then, goodbye and thanks for watching. That was quick.
Yeah, Ma, don't worry. I'm driving on the new expressway and it's absolutely safe.
Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.